Can you explain the build a bit? I have already explained it, but I guess I can explain it again. I'm gonna explain it and then I'm going to join you again because I need to do some yapping for a bit. So first of all, you want to have mana on your first item. You wanna buy Lost Chapter, okay? If you want to buy a Lost Chapter item. So, if you look at all the Lost Chapter items on ZOE, Malignants you cannot buy because you cannot use the passive. Archangel stuff you can technically buy, but buying a tier feels terrible on ZOE. Plus, you cannot really use the excess mana to its maximum potential, so it's like, even though you're buying Archangels and it scales into giving you more AP and haste than other like Lost Chapter items, if you are not able to get the maximum advantage out of all the extra mana that it gives you, it's useless. Especially when your champion does not scale out of mana. For example, Ryze, Kassadin, those champions can use the maximum mana pool out of this item, and they also scale with the extra mana with their spells. So like, it makes sense for them to buy this item. ZOE doesn't really have that, and ZOE cannot use the entire mana pool, neither does it scale with it, so it's just useless. Then, you're going to look at Ludens. Ludens is good on ZOE. The problem with Ludens is that the moment the game hits 20 minutes, it's useless. Its passive is useless. Luden's passive is only good until 20 minutes. This passive does not scale. It gets outscaled very fast. The stats are good. The passive is good early on, but then gets outscaled extremely fast. So in a meta that you need to be strong around to have objectives in the mid game, around, let's say, third dragon, Atakan, and what's it called, Baron buff, and Baron, then this item is probably just not for you. It's useless because it will not provide you with any value during those fights because it gets outscaled. It only gives you stats and it doesn't give you a passive, basically. And the next item is Blackfire Torch. Blackfire Torch is good. The problem with Blackfire Torch is that you cannot use the passive as ZOE early on, and on top of that, ZOE cannot utilize Fated Ashes in lane. Fated Ashes is not an item that ZOE wants to buy in the laning phase. It feels terrible to buy, it feels terrible to use, it's just bad in the laning phase. On top of that, you don't have enough ability power to utilize the Blackfire passive a lot, so it's basically useless in the early game until you have a lot of AP. And against champions that have a lot of sustain, for example, if you're playing against champions that run D-Shield and Second Wind, the Blackfire Torch damage, the burn, is very bad because it's going to reapply all the D-Shield and Second Wind. So you're basically healing your opponent more. So it's just bad, right? So for that reason, you only build Lost Chapter. Lost Chapter is an insanely gold efficient item for 1.2 thousand gold. And then, ZOE, in this patch individually, her early game got nerfed. Right? Her early game got nerfed by 5 damage on every single point of Q until level 14. And her W by 15 damage on every rank. So that means 2 things. First thing, Ignite on ZOE got nerfed, especially in the early game, because of that. Because you cannot ignite somebody and kill them from half HP with Ignite anymore, through W-based damage. You cannot do that anymore. You can if you're ahead, but if you're even, you cannot really do that anymore. So that is nerfed, first of all. Second of all, you need 300 AP to basically make your W be buffed out of the extra 5% AP ratio that Riot gave here in this patch. And so you want to have as much ability power as fast as possible into the game. 300 in specifically, in particular, so that you can make your W be better. Plus, once you have enough ability power, your Q nerf is basically nullified. Because once you have, let's say for example, 200 and 300 ability power, your Q is basically just going to do the same amount of damage. Like, if you have 200, 300 ability power and above, you don't care about -5 base damage. You don't give a it's completely irrelevant. And that's why you got F-Cap, second item, so that you can hit the 300 AP mark as fast as possible, so that your W basically instantly is buffed, and your Q the Q nerf is basically nullified. On top of that, you got Teleport and not Ignite for 2 reasons. First reason, as we said earlier, Ignite got nerfed in the early game for ZOE. Second reason, in a meta where fighting around objectives in the mid and late game is how you're going to win out the game, and early game doesn't really have an impact. Why would you ever go Ignite? You should go Teleport, you should make sure you farm well, you have good experience and good tempo around the map, so you are strong in those mid and late game team fights, and you can also play macro later better at those moments. So that's why you go Lost Chapter into Death Cap. The reason why you go Ionian Boots is because you need haste. Otherwise, you're not going to have haste in your build, and it's also the cheapest boots, and they're pretty strong. And they're not that expensive. They're pretty cheap, making it easier to reach your death cap faster. Then third item, you're going to buy Cosmic Drive, because Cosmic Drive is good in teamfights. It gives you a lot of the stats that you're missing. It gives you movement speed through the passive and the 4% extra movement speed from the stats. It gives you the ability haste that you're missing. It gives you health, a very OP stat in the game right now. It gives you a decent amount of ability power, not too much, not too little, enough for the value of you giving 3000 gold for this item, so it's just good. Fourth item, you go for Void Staff, of course, because you need that. By the time you're going to start building Void Staff, you're going to, all champions in the game are going to be around level 14 to 15, 16, basically the time period of the game where people will have a lot of MR from just their base stats by being high level, and because you don't need more health or more CDR, the next best in slot is Void Staff, because it also scales well with ZOE because of gives you a lot of AP and you have high AP ratios and stuff like that, right? And for your last item, you're going to go Shadow Flame. You go Shadow Flame because Shadow Flame, in comparison to Storm Surge is better early game, and Storm Surge is better against very squishy champions. Shadow Flame is better late game, and Shadow Flame is better against high health champions. And the reason is that the more HP a champion has, the more damage you're going to get out of Shadow Flame, because the more time you will spend in the 40% health threshold hitting the enemy champion, like you're going to get more damage out of it the more health the enemy champion has, right? Because you're going to be hitting them inside of their 40% health threshold more, so you get more damage, and you also get a lot of AP and a lot of magic penetration to scale it with all of your percentage magic pen. And lastly, you're going to finish your Lost Chapter into Blackfire Torch. And why do you build why you go Blackfire Torch and not another item? Because now Blackfire Torch is actually broken, because you have enough ability power to scale the Blackfire passive so that it gives you a lot of AP, and the burn now actually matters from the Blazeful Blaze for a lot of damage, because you have a lot of AP and Shadow Flame. The Shadow Flame makes the Blackfire Torch crit, which is just insane on low health targets, and you also get extra haste for those team fights later, so that you can spam spells and have agency around the game. And that's basically it. Hope it made sense. For the runes, you go on flitzing and conditioning, because you cannot itemize any armor and MR in your build, because mage items, itemizing armor and MR as a mage is impossible, so that's why you got these two items, or like these two, runes. You go haste for the early game haste, and the haste that you need so that you are in the sweet spot, adaptive and flat health for the early game. You go Airy against ranged matchups, phase rush into a lot of melees that want to jump on you and kill you, to kite them. Here you don't need mana flow, so you go Nimbus Cloak. Nimbus Cloak also has better synergy with ZOE than anything else here in this line. You don't want more haste, so you don't go Transcendence. You don't need more movement speed, you don't go Celerity, so you go Absolute Focus. Scorch is useless. Gathering Storm is only good if you reach the 30-minute mark, but by 30 minutes all games are usually already over, so you're better off going Water Walking. You can use it in lane because the river is closer to the lane with the map change that Riot did like 2 years ago. It also, the ability power also is good, the movement speed is good for all those skirmishes in the early and mid game, and it all just makes sense. And yeah, that's basically the build.